Hello again, college football fans. It is Wednesday, October 8th, 2023. We've got week 11 coming up in college football. Crazy to believe that it's already that late in the season. Alabama is going on the road to Lexington, Kentucky to go into Commonwealth Stadium and take on the Kentucky Wildcats of the Eastern Division over there in the SEC here in this last season of the Western and Eastern Division dichotomy. This game, I feel like I've got a pretty good feel for it, way better than I did, although my pick wasn't that far off in the LSU game. I feel more confident in how this game's going to go. I think the fact that it's at 11 o'clock, I don't like that. I like the fact that, for me personally, I love being able to wake up and watch the game, get that over with. That way I'm able to just sort of relax and enjoy the rest of the college football day instead of having to walk on pins and needles like I did last week before the Alabama game kicks off. But Kentucky, I've talked a little bit about Mark Stoops. I think he's a great coach. I think that he gets everything that you could get out of a Kentucky football program. I don't think he really goes all that far above. He has gotten a couple of 10-win seasons, which I think that's more than any Kentucky football fan should ever expect, is a 10-win, or at least they should never expect any more than that. He wins the games he's supposed to win. He usually loses the games that he's supposed to lose. I like the way he's built his program, though, because he put an emphasis on his linemen, both the defensive and the offensive lines, and I think that's why they've been so consistent since Mark Stoops has been there. And, consistent good seasons is not really what you think of when you think of Kentucky football historically, but that's what they've been since Mark Stoops has been there, and he's been there a while now. I think about at least 10 seasons. But like I said, the fact that he's put more emphasis on getting great guys on the lines is I think the reason that they've been as consistent as they've been there. And it's also the reason why they're pretty predictable. And they just don't have the resources to be able to lure all of those pretty toys that guys in Georgia and Alabama and places like that have. On offense mostly, but, also on defense. Those great, elite linebackers and defensive backs. Those guys are just sort of out of the reach. It's like you've got sort of a budget at a place like Kentucky, and you can either choose to get as many explosive outside playmakers, fast guys as you can get, or you can spend all your budget on the defensive linemen. You're not going to be able to get both like in the top level programs. So he's chosen to go that route, and I think that's the way in the SEC you want to go. In contrast, I think Lane Kiffin is sort of on the other side of that. Not that the linemen that he has at Ole Miss, especially on offense, are bad, but I feel like he concentrates more on getting speed and explosive players. And that's worked out well for him because, right now I would say the talent level at Ole Miss is higher than the overall talent level at Kentucky, and, that's why you see them winning double-digit games and getting, to the point where they're at 8 or 9 wins by November every year. But Kentucky's not that far behind that team. But I don't believe this is a good matchup for Kentucky. It doesn't set up well for Alabama. Alabama, the entire program takes a sigh of relief just about every year after the LSU game. So I feel like that's definitely going to be a factor. The fact that it's in the morning is sort of working against their intensity level. I do like the fact that it's on the road, to be honest. I would be more afraid of Alabama having a massive letdown game if this were in Bryant-Denny, as opposed to the fact, because it gives them, a little bit of reason to be worried. It gives more validity to Nick Saban's warnings of how they have to be on guard and have a high level of intensity and focus going into this game. So I do like that part of it. But just the fact that Kentucky plays, they play a very similar style of football to the way that Georgia plays and Alabama, traditional Alabama. Not in the last few years. We've been very quarterback centric. But they play a pro style, hard-nosed defense. But the problem is they don't have quite the level of talent that you've got in places like Georgia and Alabama. And that sort of plays right into the hands of a Nick Saban defense. And I think that's where this game is going to be kept a little bit boring probably for fans, and there's not going to be a whole lot of suspense because I just feel like Kentucky's going to have a hard time moving the ball on this Alabama defense. As good as we are in the front seven, Leary has come on a little bit in recent weeks and been more what they hoped he would be at Kentucky. But I feel like he's going to have a rough day against Alabama's front seven and secondary, because even if his receivers are able to get open, he's still going to have to get the ball out ultra fast. And, I know Ray Davis is a great running back, one of the best backs in the SEC, if not the best. But the way they run sort of straight up, there's not a whole lot of tricks, there's not a whole lot of creativity, I guess I would say, in their offense. They try to run straight at you, and I just don't think they quite have the horses to be able to do that, especially against a team like Alabama. And our defense, particularly this year, it's going to be tough for that offense to get a whole lot going. Now, on the other side, I expect, since the fact that it is sort of a classic trap game scenario, we are taking a little bit of you can't help it to take a little bit of a sigh of relief. Nick Saban calls it relief syndrome. And I don't think that that's going to be a problem for the entire game, but I expect Alabama to go through stretches in this game where they don't get a whole lot going. Maybe 1 or 2 3-and-outs in a row. It wouldn't surprise me at all. The main thing that I want to see out of this game is just obviously no injuries. And I would love to see us get a fast start in this one and come out and put, 2 or 3 scores on the board early in the first quarter, and then just kind of coast the rest of the way, get some of the guys that are further down on the depth chart into the game, and that way we won't have to worry too much about injuries so much in the second half. You see that so much against games like this where, you're expected to win. You're favored, by more than a touchdown, which Alabama is favored, I think, 10.5 points, I believe, is the Vegas line in this one. So these are the games, especially if they kind of drag on and you have a hard time putting a team away. Injuries happen in these kind of games a whole lot of times. And, as good as we've looked in the last 6 quarters of play, we can't afford to lose guys because, there's still so much to be done. Georgia looms in the SEC championship game. I know none of that stuff is set in stone, but, the thought of Georgia and Alabama, I think both are in the same spot right now, which is they've got 2 more conference games, and they only have to win one of those 2. And what scenario do you see Georgia or Alabama losing both of the SEC games that they have left? I will say this, though. On paper, Georgia looks like they've got a little bit of a tougher road to hoe in that respect against Ole Miss and Tennessee, which Alabama fortunately has both of those teams behind them. But back to this Kentucky-Alabama game, I don't think Alabama's going to get out to a good start because of the sort of, feeling of relief and maybe a little bit of a guard let down going into this game because, those players know that Kentucky is a lower level of talent than they've faced for the last couple of weeks, probably since Arkansas, although I would say Arkansas versus Kentucky would be a very interesting game. I think that would be a toss-up game. I'd have a hard time calling who would win that one. But I just feel like there's going to be the defense is going to hold down the fort. I don't see Kentucky scoring more than twice, and I almost feel like I'm being generous in that. I've got a gut feeling that the defense is going to come up big in this game for Alabama. I think Kentucky is going to score about 10 points. Touchdown and a field goal. Could be 2 touchdowns. Could be 2 field goals. So 10 points for Kentucky, and I feel like Alabama is going to, like I said, probably struggle to get things going in the first half, but they've been a second-half team all year long, so I don't see any reason not to think that that's going to continue. And I feel like Alabama should manage somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 scores, and that's touchdowns. They may get into field goal range a couple of times. And that's another thing that I would like to see happen since Will Reichert struggled a little bit. He struggled a lot. He missed both of his field goal attempts against LSU, and neither one of them were that long. I'd love to see him get some attempts here in Commonwealth Commonwealth Stadium Saturday and get his mojo back. You know, that's really important with kickers. I'd like to see him get his mind right, especially before we have to go down to Jordan-Hare Stadium, because, you know, kicking has always been a nightmare in that building, and hopefully we won't require clutch kicking to win that ball game, but if we do, we definitely want his mind to be right going into that one. So I feel like Alabama should be able to have spurts offensively in this game where they look really good. I don't expect them to look great the entire game, but I'm thinking that the final in this one is going to be Alabama 27 and Kentucky 10, which would cover the spread for Alabama. But, you know, I feel like the spread's pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if that was more like 21-10 or something like that. But I just feel like with Tommy Rees and Jalen Milroe kind of discovering the new toys that they've discovered over the last couple of games, I wouldn't be surprised to see us scored over that 10.5 by about a touchdown. So 27-10, I like Alabama. Expect another preview video going into Week 11 before Saturday, where I'll talk about you know, upset chances, upset watches, and that sort of thing. But until then, just hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Hope you enjoy the rest of this college football season. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun because nationally, you know, I can't remember a year during the college football playoff format that so many teams were still viable candidates to be in that college football playoff. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun watching the rest of this thing play out. Thanks for watching.